Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party, the podcast network that has felt a massive tremor in its force pants ever since the Episode 9 trailer dropped this weekend at Star Wars Celebration. Just like the Sith, when it comes to Filibuster, there are always two, a master and an apprentice. I'm Dallas King, and the Darth Maul to my Darth Sidious, it's Lee Hutchison. How are you?
I like how you get to come back in the sequel and I get chucked down a big kind of well.
Hey, you turned up out of nowhere at the end of Solo, a Star Wars story, so, you know, swings and roundabouts.
Though I do wish, imagine like this was like a podcast and like instead of my usual sort of dull Scottish voice, it was actually Peter Serafinovich that was like voicing Lee Hutchison on the podcast. That would have been like pretty awesome.
You would have been voiced by Peter Serafinovich in the original, but then transferred, I think it's Sam Witwer took over in the cartoon and then became the movie. Although I did read recently that apparently Serafinovich did record the dialogue for Star Wars Story, but was replaced pretty much the last minute when they decided to go with the guy who was doing the Clone Wars TV series. So imagine that. Imagine recording it and then going to see the film and then being like, that's not my voice. That must have been a bit of a kick in the balls. Of course, Darth Maul doesn't have balls anymore because he got cut off. So yeah.
Yeah, is it not like a spider or something now?
Yeah, he's now got sort of mechanical spider legs, I believe, or something like that. Yeah. It's all, yeah. I have to say, I haven't really kept up to date with all the sort of Clone Wars stuff. So yeah, the fact that you turned up out of nowhere, I was like, okay. But yeah, I guess I'm getting a bit sidetracked here, haven't I? Because I was in the middle of an intro and then I've gone off on a Darth Maul tangent. But because, I mean, we do have a lot to discuss on today's episode. It's our first real catch-up probably since I returned from annual leave. So a huge thanks to Kim Morrison for ably stepping into the pod booth while I was away and joining us for last week's Stephen King special, which is available to listen to now. Have you brushed up any more on your Stephen King since last week?
Unfortunately, I haven't had much of a time, but I have become more aware of some more things that I probably have missed as well. Like, I genuinely couldn't believe it. Like, I remembered I was sitting there, like, you know, I'm usually so diligent with my prep, and I just remember just sitting at my desk going, what's my top 5 going to be? And usually I would type in, hey, Stephen King into Google and see what was coming up, get some prompts, but that never occurred to me to do that, and I just sat at my desk going, I don't think I can think of enough here. And then it was just as we were going on and things like The Mist were being dropped in, I was like, oh my god, I actually have seen quite a bit, and I was so disappointed in myself.
I know, well, you know, you didn't have the most glaring oversight. You know, Kim, who is a self-confessed Stephen King that hadn't seen Stand By Me, so hopefully that's been corrected by now. So in time for the next time that she's on. So we'll have to find out what she made of that one. So. But before we dive in properly to the episode, I just wanted to quickly ask the listeners for their assistance with something. The British Podcast Awards are currently taking votes and nominations for the Listener's Choice Award, which is voted for by the fans. As we are based in the UK, Filibuster and our other podcast, the A24 Project, are eligible for the award. We would really appreciate it if you could head over to www.britishpodcastawards.com/vote and give us your vote. If you go into the search bar and enter Filibuster or A24 Project, the podcast will appear, and if you select that, add in your details and click, you will give us a vote, which would be hugely appreciative. So voting closes 17th of May, so you've got a while to do that, but, you know, I'm not sure if we'll get nominated or win, but, you know, every little helps. So if you happen to have a couple of minutes spare, if you could do that, that would be awesome. So thank you. But first things first, it's time to deal with the biggest news of the week, and you know, it was hinted at the beginning. No, not Star Wars. I'm, of course, talking about the fact that Lee has finally got to see 8th grade. Lee, how was it, and was it worth the wait?
Yeah, I kind of felt like I had one last jinx in me before I got the chance to see it at the Cineworld preview. just kind of quite recently. On the Sunday, I was running the Manchester Marathon, and then like a couple of days before that, I got like an email through from Picture House Cinemas going, "Hey, members can see 8th grade on Sunday morning." And I was like, "You're absolutely kidding me. I'm not even like remotely near a sort of cinema, let alone sort of being in a position where I can just sit down. I'm going to be sort of running aimlessly through the streets of Manchester." So I felt I was kind of being a bit undone. I was like, one last jinx in before I get the chance to see it. But yeah, I got the chance to see it at the Cineworld preview, and it was really great. I remember it was just sort of that first anxious few moments when sort of the Sony logo comes up and then A24, and thinking like, oh, I'm finally going to get the chance to see this now. Is this going to be kind of everything I expect it to be? Because I've been hyped for this movie for sort of 10 months now, and if someone had even sort of a couple of weeks ago went, right, you can see Avengers Endgame right now, or you can see 8th grade, I would have picked seeing 8th grade. Just sort of one of those ones, like I just couldn't kind of wait any more longer for it. And I really liked it. And what kind of surprised me most is that, the film has been shown at festivals and it's been on Blu-ray for months now in America. And, the trailers have been around for quite a while. But I was surprised how much of the film had been sort of kept up its sleeves. There's some really quite amusing sort of set pieces and moments where it never kind of was brought up, or I sort of avoided some of the think pieces and articles as well. And it was nice to go into a film like this where it feels like it's been all around the world but here, and find that a lot of it's going to be a surprise, a lot of the twists and turns, sort of how they portray being young and being a teenager. I thought it was lovely, and I think it was just, I thought Elsie Fisher was so good in that role. I really want to see the film again and just watch her performance in even more detail. I thought she just nailed it in the role, and it was just a lovely film. I thought it had a great soundtrack. It was great humor. I thought it was incredibly well observed. I think it's going to be, an all-time classic.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm so glad that you liked it, because I had this vision in my head. Have you ever seen the film Fanboys? Which is about this group of kids who basically break into Skywalker Ranch to try and get an early copy of The Phantom Menace. And then at the end, they're watching it in the cinema, and the lights are going down, and the guy turns to his other mate and goes, "Dude, what if it's not any good?" And it's just like, oh my God. So, I mean, imagine if you'd hated it after all this time. It would have been a crushing, sort of soul-destroying disappointment, but I'm so glad you liked it. I mean, I think we had a brief chat after Glasgow, but I didn't want to get into it, because I didn't want to spoil it for you. So it's good that we finally get the chance to chat about it now, because I mean, I thought Elsie Fisher is absolutely superb in this, and I think it's going to be one of those sort of coming of age sort of school sort of movie classics that will sort of only get better with age. And there is a danger, I guess, with the sort of with the use of social media and sort of YouTube and stuff. It's like, will these technologies and certain social media platforms be around in 10 years and whatever? But I think what works so well about the film is that, I was last at, I guess, was it middle school? So I think the UK equivalent of 8th grade would be probably going into sort of secondary school, sort of around about the sort of 11, 12 age sort of range there. So it's like going into secondary school, and I mean, that was, God knows, that was what, 27 years ago for me. But I mean, I could still see, a lot of myself and my school experiences in that, there's the awkwardness, there's the not really sure if you're able to connect with people, there's the, the school functions, the pool party that she goes to, which is almost played out like a sort of horror film or whatever. It's like she would rather be anywhere else in the world than having to go to this public gathering where everyone's in their swimming costumes and stuff like this, and everyone's acting up and stuff like that. So, it's also Glasgow, the audience were all very receptive to it, so you can always, those sort of struggles of a young kid going into school and stuff like that is universal. The technologies have changed, they're using social media these days in order to connect and stuff like that. But, there's something beautifully universal about it that I think everyone will be able to connect to.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so great, is that, I left that sort of world behind, years ago as well. I mean, I'm thinking it's like 2 decades ago almost now. And you watch it and you just think it feels so universal that it is set in a high school, etc. But I kind of work in mental health, and a lot of the anxieties, the social situations, the stresses that Kayla goes through are relatable for a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And I think it's a movie like this where I really want to be in a sort of position where sometimes where it's like the type of film where you want to pick it up on DVD or Blu-ray when it gets like reduced to sort of £6 and FOP like that, and kind of hand it out to people and go, hey, here's a film, or pick it up for sort of Christmas presents and Secret Santas, or just gifting a friend. It's like that kind of film where you just sort of want to be involved and spread the word, and for people to see it, because people like me and you will see it, and the people that listen to podcasts, etc., will find their way to seeing it. But sometimes the audience for these sorts of films, it needs to be just completely dropped into their lap. It's hard to find the time amongst all the Game of Thrones watches, what's new added to Netflix this year, and I think a film like this almost needs to be sort of shoved in people's faces, to be blunt.
I think there will be a bit of a media blitz, certainly from the critics in the UK, telling people to go and see this, because as we've alluded to on previous podcasts, this is dropping the same weekend as Avengers Endgame. So, the UK distributor is perhaps, it's putting a lot of its eggs in one basket, in that this is the counter-programming choice for people who don't want to see Avengers Endgame. I know that certainly from, the past few years, looking at a multiplex's scheduling on the opening weekend of a film like Avengers Endgame, there will not be much more choice available. My local Cineworld has 10 screens. I'm fully expecting Avengers Endgame to open on, I would say, at least 8 of them, maybe moving up to sort of 9 by the time you get into the main evening shows. So, it will struggle for screen space, but I think the people that do make an effort and go and see this, back in the day, there would have been the chance that if Avengers Endgame was sold out, you would have to go see something else. But that was when you were looking at 35mm prints and you had a limited number of screens you could put it on. With digital, you can just basically have it running 24 hours a day across your entire cinema if you want. So it will struggle for screen space, but I think the people that will go and see it will find something really special. And I think it needs to be trumpeted and marketed for what it is, and that's just a great movie that people deserve to see, I think.
One question. So obviously we had Bo Burnham on the podcast earlier, so we'll cut to him after your question. But what I wanted to ask you was, you got to interview Bo Burnham on the red carpet before you actually got a chance to actually see the film, as it goes with these things sometimes.
You're destroying the myths of movie magic behind the curtain.
So obviously, because it's so difficult to get these press screenings sometimes, so you got the chance to speak to Bo Burnham before you kind of got the chance to see the film, but you get the joy of hearing what the film's going to be kind of about, etc. Was the film what you expected when you went in, or did speaking to him sort of colour what you were going to expect a bit more?
No, yeah, I mean, it is an odd one when you're trying to... You've got this thought, you go into the red carpet, you get to interview the director. You haven't seen the film, but you're trying to do research on the film, but also in a way that you're not spoiling the film for yourself. So when you actually see it, you have to be slightly broad in your topics of discussion and things like that. So, you go with the obvious sort of, what do you think of the whole sort of social media phenomenon? Is it something that, should be police in schools and all that? You throw in a funny question about... because I'd seen him sort of talking how he wanted to work with Elsie Fisher again in the future, and I thought it'd be fun, because the character seemed like such a great character that it'd be fun to see her at different stages in her educational development. So would we see like a Boyhood style or a Before Sunset style trilogy where, we catch up with, Elsie Fisher's character as she grows older and stuff? I think that could actually work, having finally seen the film. I think that could be quite something fun to see and see what she's doing later. Has she become an influencer, or has she sort of given up on social media altogether? It would be quite fun to see. But it's a tough one, but I think I'm glad I got the chance to speak to him. And yeah, let's hear what he had to say right next, shall we? Hi, tell us A24 project. How does it feel to have the film sort of come into international audiences and have sort of different age ranges and generations accept the film and embrace the film? because, you know, the technology, they may not be so familiar with it, but it's the struggles and experiences seem to be quite universal.
Yeah, it's great. You know, I mean, all we want is for people to connect with the film and see the film. So the fact that we're here with, you know, the little weird film we made, you know, a year and a half ago in upstate New York with a bunch of 8th graders is incredible. So, yeah, we just hope people can continue to connect with it. It's just like it's just a privilege. It's sort of surreal.
Yeah, and in your stand-up, which is sort of related to this, you mentioned about always the need to perform on social media. How do you think this film will help people sort of learn that they need to sort of balance the online and offline sides of their personality?
Yeah, you know, the film really isn't trying to instruct people on what to do or how to feel. Like, hopefully, you know, things like that, you know, it can hopefully inspire a conversation to have about that. But I didn't want the film to sort of finger wag or tell you what to do, or I think there's a little too much commentary on the internet and not enough just portrayal of how it feels. So the film really is just trying to sort of portray the subjective experience of what it means for this person to be online. And then if you want to draw your own conclusions based on that, that's great. But, you know, the film, I don't want the film to have that conversation for you.
Absolutely. And finally, you've said that you'd like to work with Elsie again. Could we potentially see a like Before Sunrise style trilogy where we revisit her in 12th grade or college,
maybe.
sophomore year?
The truth is, she's like a kid, and I want to let her live her life. You know, I don't want to like immediately have her thinking about the next film she's in, and then. Or you get the Boyhood effect, where then like the kid becomes a photographer because they were on set so much they've of course developed an interest in photography. You know what I mean? Like, so I gotta like let her like live her life, and then, you know, in 4 years we'll check back in if we want to do something, we'll do it. But the kid deserves some space.
Great, thanks very much.
Take it easy.
Cheers. So that was Bo Burnham on the red carpet at the Glasgow Film Festival. It was great to speak to him, and it was great answers to the questions, and it was a great night in Glasgow. But Lee, I've got a question to actually ask you. You know, the film opens up with Elsie Fisher doing one of her YouTube videos, and, you know, it's revealed throughout the film that she's doing all these inspirational sort of things on YouTube to basically as a way of almost trying to prove it to herself that she can be this kind of person. But the views on the YouTube channel would suggest that no one is really watching it. And, you know, you've got this thing about creating something to put out into the world, but there's that fear that nobody is listening or nobody's watching. Do you ever feel that way when we podcast, or are you hopeful now that, you know, we are reaching the right kind of people?
I guess that's always something that I think anyone that does podcasts always have that sort of worry or anxiety. I mean, you can, you know, I suppose the joy is you can look online and see, hey, people are downloading and listening and tuning in New Zealand or something like that. The one thing I always want to kind of know is, like, who are these people that are downloading it and listening to it in, you know, Timbuktu or, you know, Chicago or things like that. You wonder how, like, we're recording this on a Monday night over Skype, and then it'll get edited and then put, and you wonder, like, how do they find it? What is the search thing that they put into the internet and come across it? And, you know, I remember when we launched our kind of other podcast, you know, this one's kind of been long established for a good few years now, and it's like, what happens if no one kind of listens? That you just make something and it just goes out there and it doesn't get sort of sent back to you. But I mean, I'm incredibly guilty of it. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and at work I sometimes have a YouTube thing on in the background while I'm writing up reports or whatever, you know, behind the curtains of real life there. And I'm very bad at not leaving comments or reviews or taking a few seconds to hit someone's 5-star thing. And you think, you know, I know how much effort it takes to record, produce, release these things, to put yourself out there for better or worse. And you think sometimes it'd be nice to, I should be doing it more to say, hey, I really like your content, there it goes into the world. Like, I do it here and there, but not as much as I should. And I think, yeah, it is something I think you get kind of nervous about. But I think the fact that we are established, I try not to worry about that. I know episodes will go out there and be listened to and heard, and, you know, I'd love to know what brought someone to that thing. But I enjoy that, and I think, you know, I think the boom in podcasts, etc., you know, people are putting things out there, and whether they get listened to or not, I don't know, but I think people just enjoy the process of making things, talking about what they like. I mean, I think podcasts have almost replaced probably the old forum in a way. You know, you put something out there and go, here's my opinions, you know, you want to listen to it, there it is. And I think that's how I maybe view it a little bit. What about for yourself? You know, you came into this sort of last year. What was your sort of expectation? You know, you've came onto a show and become sort of the right hand man, you know, left hand, whatever, you know, and then you've gone on and created your own content as well and stuff like that, from going beyond blogs. What's it been kind of like for you?
I've really enjoyed it so far, to be honest, because, you know, it sometimes feels like, you know, that sort of post-movie conversation that you might have had sort of down the pub, or, you know, if you're going for a tasty debrief, one might say, after the film, to discuss what what you thought of it and what you liked, what you didn't like and stuff. So it's that kind of, it's just that, just like the opportunity to talk about film, which is, you know, the thing I love, you know, in the world more than anything, apart from my wife who's listening, of course. Lucy, I love you more than I love film, but, you know, just had to put that out there because she is listening all the way from India. So, but yeah, no, I just love the opportunity to talk about film, write about film, and talking about it with other people who are as passionate about it as yourself and stuff. And it's great that, you know, when people interact with the podcast and send in reviews and stuff like that. So it really sort of, when you get reviews and stuff, it does give you like a warm, fuzzy feeling and a glow that says, yeah, it is worthwhile. It's worth doing it because, you know, somewhere out there, whether it's I think Oman or India or, you know, the United States, people seem to have an interest in respect what we have to say about films. So that's nice.
Absolutely, and it's moments like that as well. Like you do this, and, you know, episodes where we discuss this, and then it's like the opportunities that we get where, like, you know, there's Bo Burnham, and like he is on the show, like we have created content and he has got involved in it, whether or not someone has just went, right, here you go, Bo, you're going to now go stand in front of that person. But, you know, we've been lucky to get people like that, and, you know, people that have come on for full episodes, etc. And it's kind of a joy when you think, oh, like, you want to actually talk to us and come on, okay, sure. I always like have this fear that when I do these things, like, I don't get worried about doing the usual conversation episodes. It's always like, all right, that person said they're going to come on, you know, I'm going to log into Skype and talk to this person that I respect and, you know, love their work. Are they actually going to be on the other end of the line? Are they going to think I'm a fraud or anything like that? That's where my anxiety about creating content comes from, is like, what happens when I sit down in a hotel suite with, like, you know, a movie star or writer or whatever, and they just think, like, who the fuck is this guy? How has he got into the room? And, like, why am I doing content for his podcast? That's always the thing for me.
Well, I mean, what I found is, you know, social media does get a lot of bad press these days, but clearly social media has opened up the world of interviewing and the ability to connect with people in the industry to talk to them, because, you know, outside of, you know, if you don't live in London, sometimes it's very difficult to get, you know, the press junket style interviews unless you're at Glasgow or Edinburgh Film Festival in Scotland. But clearly you've had great success, you know, over the last few months, sort of contacting people through social media, whether it's Twitter or whatever, and getting in contact and being able to organise these interviews and stuff. So, you know, it's, you know, people can knock social media from time to time, but clearly, you know, it is a help at times. And also, you know, these people clearly want to talk, otherwise they wouldn't agree to be in the interviews and stuff like that, surely.
If it makes anyone feel bad, like, you get these opportunities sometimes where I was one of these people that there was like the UK premiere of Avengers Endgame the other day, where they showed like 20 minutes of footage and they had Paul Rudd and Chris Hemsworth, and like I fired in a ballot like request, like, yeah, maybe I'll win it, who knows. And then like I won the opportunity to go down to London to see the early preview of the film and see the cast and stuff, and then it was like, oh, I have to go to London in like 3 days and it's like ridiculously expensive and can't go. And now there's like been a follow-up where it's like, you can go to London and you can see the film like 36 hours early, and it's like, oh, I would have to travel down to London with like 6 days notice to go see a film a day early, and it's like, oh, I've seen Eighth Grade, but now the first world problems continue with events like this, where I've now been jinxed out of being in the same room as Chris Hemsworth and Scarlett Johansson, etc. It's been a bummer in that respect. One day I'll have a week without these kind of first world
You're
problems.
clearly not a true fan, are you? A true fan would have booked an overnight train. They would have gone down. They would have spent however much money possible in order to be in the room to not watch a completed film. Because I remember when we went to see the Avengers Infinity War footage in Edinburgh last year, my wife was like, oh, so that's great, you're getting to go down and see the whole film. And I was like, no. She went, what? No, it's only about 20 minutes. 20 minutes! You're going all the way down for them. Look, they're going to show it's going to be great because, they're going to be in Edinburgh and they're going to show the footage. You're going to get to see Edinburgh on the big screen. And then, of course, Joe Russo comes out and says, now, I'm going to warn you that the footage from Edinburgh is not in this sizzle reel you're about to see. And everyone's like, I mean, it was still great to see the footage and stuff, and we got signed posters with them and stuff like that, so that was good. But, there was the slight sort of crushing disappointment of you've come down all the way to see something and then it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be. But we're, as of now, because this is dropping on a Wednesday, we're now just 2 weeks away from Avengers Endgame, and I'm starting to get excited. Are you? Can you feel it now? Have you transferred all that 8th grade energy and focusing it now on Endgame?
Not quite yet. I'm really looking forward to it, but I'm not hyped yet. I think going in, I'm calm and relaxed about it, and I just want to see it. I'm really curious to see where they're going to go, what they're going to do. All this stuff about, oh my god, it's 3 hours long. I don't really care about that sort
fine
of
by me.
Boring story and stuff. But I think it's going to be, yeah, exactly. These things happen. I've sat through 3 hours of some bizarre things in my time, so it's not going to be a big issue. So I'm looking forward to finally seeing it and what kind of shape it takes. I think it's going to be one for the ages, and I like how I think my relaxed mood about it has been probably reflected in the marketing campaign, which has been nice. They've played it, here's the trailers. We're not going to tell you anything. We're not going to hype anything. You're not going to see any of the set pieces. So it feels like I'm going to go into this, and I want to sort of keep my mindset sort of in that similar one of like, hey, will be.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've heard rumours that the Russos have actually shot scenes and footage that will not be in the film. They've done it just purely for the marketing in order to try and wrong foot people to throw them off the track and stuff like that. So this is I'm excited to see what it's going to be, and I'm doing the event, the Infinity War Endgame double bill, so that should be a great night. And I think it should be it's the end of an era, which it seems odd to say that after sort of 10 years into movies, it's probably as someone who grew up loving Star Wars, this is probably the sort of biggest sort of film event that I've probably seen in my time. To have a series of films that go this long, 22 films, for the quality to be as good and to have attempted such an overarching structure, it's not really been done in film from what I've seen. And yeah, I'm excited to see, and hopefully they can, as they would say, sort of in gymnastic terms, nail the landing and sort of not screw it up at the final moment. I've got faith in the Russos. I've loved Winter Soldier, I've loved Civil War, and I've loved Infinity War. So I think they will deliver. I trust the Russos.
Yeah, exactly, and we'll certainly review it in a few weeks' time. We're going to have Kim back to discuss it as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this one unfolds. I'm curious to see how you're going to respond to it when you kind of catch it in sort of the Disneyland IMAX as well. I bet that'll be a cracker experience.
I think it'll be a good one, although the last time I watched a film at Disneyland Paris, it was Kong Skull Island, and I thought, oh, well, the worst, it'll probably be, in English. It might have French subtitles. It was in French with no subtitles, so it was the first viewing I'd seen of it, so I had no real idea what was going on. I was having to make up backstories for all the characters. The only word I really sort of recognised was sort of Samuel L. Jackson's, French dubbed actor screaming "Sange" at the top of his lungs and stuff like that. So, and I'd only picked that up from watching years of Eddie Izzard when he did all those routines. The Sange est sous la branche. So that was it. But I'm sure it'll be great. And yeah, although I'm going to avoid all the 3Ds and 4DX and the unnecessary extras. So, IMAX is what I'll go, but I don't need a moving chair and water squirted in my face to enjoy a film. So,
Yeah, I'm the same. It's just I'll catch it, and I'm seeing it on opening night in IMAX, and then I'll probably catch again in 2D a few days later when my girlfriend goes to the cinema. She was not interested. She was with a more saner option, where it's like, I'm not going to at midnight. I'm not going to go there and then come out of it 3:30 in the morning, and then go to work the next day. That's on you. So yeah, I'll definitely be seeing it again with her.
Spoilers. I mean, is she not scared of spoilers?
No, I think it's one of these ones that, like, her social media probably doesn't even register with things like this, that we kind of caught, I think, Endgame, Infinity War, like a couple weeks after it came out, and things like the snap, etc., she didn't know about, didn't even realize was going to happen. So, I always sometimes think it's like these bubbles, that we're in these bubbles, like, oh my god, there's spoilers for this, oh my god, spoilers for Game of Thrones, etc. Whereas, like, the normal world watches these things and go, yeah, that was pretty cool, yeah, okay, and goes and has a Nando's or whatever afterwards, and like it doesn't register on their Facebook or social media feeds. Whereas kind of nerds like us, we follow these kind of people where they've always got to kind of weigh on in their opinion quite quickly, and some of it can spill over. But for the normal world, things like the snap, the spoilers, the fact that there's even another Spider-Man movie coming in a few months' time just isn't on their radar, and I think they're sometimes quite lucky.
Yeah, no, there was a great video I saw on Twitter yesterday. It's a video of someone's mum watching Infinity War, and it's just like her reactions to the ending of it, and it's clear that she starts off not really all that interested in the film, but by the end she's like almost jumping up and down going, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening, stuff like that. So it's a great watch. It's somewhere on Twitter if you can find it, but it was a hilarious one. It's nice to see someone who is not like a proper, full-on Marvel fan getting excited by the ending, and that's the sign of a great movie, I guess. That people who have not seen the entire 22 series films can still connect, with a film like that. So that's always good. But there's, there was another, we're talking about spoilers and fandom and stuff. There was another sort of fandom going sort of crazy this weekend. I'm not talking about Game of Thrones, which I haven't watched yet, but I'm talking, of course, about Star Wars Celebration, which happened this weekend, and we got the reveal of the Episode 9 trailer along with the full title of the film. So it will be Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. And Lee, what were your thoughts? Did you watch the stream live? Did you see it live? And what were your take on the trailer and the title?
I did watch it live. I streamed it kind of a Friday night after work, and I find I've been to one of the panels. I went to the Rogue one a few years ago where I did the sleeping overnight one, and like they're pretty nuts when you're in there. Though my panel is slightly undone by one of the folk spoiling that they're all going to get killed at the end, and if you ever try and find the Rogue One panel, it is not there on the internet. It was immediately deleted. It wasn't shared because they spoiled it. Like, you see Alan Tudyk, who plays K2SO or something like that. His face becomes like a gif. He's just sat there like, oh my god, he has just spoiled how the film ends. So they're pretty awesome experiences. But watching the one on Friday, I was sort of just cringing. It's sort of like they weren't kind of saying anything, like we all know how these things go. And it just became a bit kind of tedious to watch. And I really wanted Richard E. Grant to be on the panel. He wasn't there, which was a bit of a bummer. But then the sort of trailer came on, and I was like, yeah, okay. I liked sort of some of the imagery. And then I was like, oh yeah, Palpatine's back. That'll be cool. But it was just sort of like watching it, I was like, oh, I think it's the weakest of the teaser trailers for the Star Wars movies so far, sort of the new trilogy. And I say this, but like I will still be there opening night. I will very much look forward to it, but I just wasn't that fussed about it. I'm kind of hoping my feeling from the panel is the movie is going to be quite low key. Like, I like the idea that it's a bunch of the core cast going on an adventure together, so it's none of these perhaps all spread around. It's going to be them focused on a mission, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. But the trailer didn't do too much for me. There's only so much I can say. I've become a bit bored of the whole Star Wars, Star Trek thing. I mean, I love Star Trek, but sort of the fandom debate and arguments and like, even after sort of this trailer came out, it kind of spilled into the whole Last Jedi arguments that people are having again, like, let the past die, and this film is just going to do this and that, and I was like, oh my god, can you guys just shut up for a little bit and just enjoy the trailer, enjoy the movies, and then we can all debate and argue. But I've just become a bit tired of sort of the whole kind of debate around these things. It's kind of done for me. What about for yourself? I think you were probably a bit more enthusiastic than me.
I think I was, yeah. No, I managed. I was hosting a Q&A at the Belmont actually at the time, so I was unable to watch the panel live. But I managed to finish the intro just in time to come out and catch the trailer. And the trailer, it did give me tingles. I don't know how much, maybe more, is potentially down to John Williams' music, and I think that Star Wars going forward after Episode 9, they say it's the end of the Skywalker saga. But, John Williams' music has been probably the one, apart from C-3PO, probably the one constant thing in that whole saga. He has linked it all together, and, knowing that going forward there probably won't be, his music is a bit of a concern, or it might not feel exactly the same. But, because, the scores for Solo and Rogue One have been okay, but not really as memorable as John Williams' music. So, and I do have my reservations, I think, on the continued reliance of these original trilogy characters. Lando's coming back now, and, they have this huge reveal that Emperor Palpatine is involved in some way or another. And, like you said, The Last Jedi was... I loved The Last Jedi. I'm going to put my hands up. I am full on Last Jedi, yes, absolutely loved it. I love the fact that they were trying to do something different. So you've got to let the past die. It's not going to go the way you think. He was trying to take Star Wars in a different direction from where it had been going, and now it looks like JJ's like, see those things that you were doing that were kind of discounting what happened in Force Awakens. I'm gonna try and retcon those again and course correct it back to where I wanted it to go originally. And yeah, I don't know. It did have some really cool moments. The bit where Rey sort of leaps over in slow motion to sort of take down a TIE fighter was cool. And there's, it was nice to see Lando back in the Millennium Falcon, especially given how, now we sort of seen more backstory with him in the Millennium Falcon and Solo, and the fact his droid becomes the navigational computer for it as well. So I wonder if they'll have a bit of a thing going back. We might get a Phoebe Waller-Bridge cameo in Rise of Skywalker, maybe. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I'm excited, but I'm not. I'm keeping my expectations a bit sort of muted at the moment because I've been burned before, and I don't want to burn again. But I thought The Force Awakens was great. I thought Last Jedi was the best Star Wars film since Empire Strikes Back, and I just love what Rian Johnson did with that. But I'll keep my options open. But in terms of the title, Rise of Skywalker, what do you think that refers to exactly?
Well, I have this theory that it's going to be... have you ever kind of watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
I have watched Buffy, yes. I'm familiar with Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
So spoilers for like a TV show that ended 15 years ago or something like that. So the final episode of Buffy, Buffy is the chosen one. She is the once in a generation Slayer. There can only be one Slayer.
You were the chosen one.
Exactly. So there's, you see the parallels between sort of Buffy and sort of the Jedi to an extent. And in the final episode of Buffy, that she decided she's sick of being the one and only Slayer and having to face all these problems in the world herself. And what she does with some jiggery pokery with an axe is that she empowers all these women who are potential Slayers to become actual Slayers, so that there are hundreds and thousands of Slayers all around the world. So anyone that could be a Slayer is a Slayer. And I don't think of Rise of the Skywalker as, it could be about Ben. I don't think it's a hint that Rey is a Skywalker. But I think it is going to be it's going to be a rise of sort of this new type of Jedi, let the past die, what a Jedi is meant to be. And that the Jedi will be this, become these Skywalkers, these, Force users, etc., that follow sort of the teachings and failings of Luke Skywalker. That is my feeling. What about for yourself?
I think that is a good theory. I have some question marks. I'd heard that quite a few people are saying that it could be the new way to describe sort of any group of Force users, but they always refer to the Jedi and the Sith. So I was wondering if it's meant to be like a collective noun for a group of people. Would it not have been Rise of the Skywalkers? So it's not that. So, but I mean, they could still be. That's just a grammatical thing. Who knows what. But I did initially. My thought was, okay, maybe Ben. This is the chance for Ben to become the hero again, and sort of maybe rather than sort of ditching the Solo name, the Organa name, he's going to take on the mantle of his grandfather essentially and become Ben Skywalker. I mean, hopefully there's nothing about Rey being linked to Luke or Leia or Han or something, because I mean that's the biggest gripe I have about it, is that the universe feels very small. Still with this continued link to these original characters. The first question that was Aki got asked was, are you Lando's daughter? And it's like, I mean, because there's only one group, family of black people in the entire galaxy. Of course, they all have to be related. No, they don't all have to be related. And I know what you're saying about this, the panel, because I did watch it back later on that night, and you've got these panels where everyone sort of turns up and it's like, yeah, it's great to be here, great. And they say, so what can you tell us about the film? I can't tell you anything about the film. And it's like, well, thanks for coming. See you later. Okay, thanks everyone. Come on. Bye-bye. And, I can imagine this is going to be the same actually with Avengers Endgame. You've got all these people going around doing press tours and it's going to be, so what can you tell us? Not much, to be honest. And it's like, well, what was the point of you coming here? I mean, these films are so big, they almost don't need press tours and press junkets and stuff. People will go see them anyway. So it feels counterproductive almost at times to be able to have them talking about, we're going to talk about our characters and stuff like that, but we can't actually discuss anything that actually happens in the film that you're about to see. And also because, even the people asking the questions, like we've said earlier, will not have seen the film either. So it's going to make for some interesting videos, and I don't know how it's going to go.
Yeah, we'll guess we'll find out in December, and I'm sure, as every other podcast in the world will do, we will do a reaction to our Star Wars in December. So there you go, tune in to episode 193 or something like that.
Yeah, but I expect for some more in-depth Star Wars celebration coverage, I think we could probably be checking out Aggressive Negotiations this week. I think because some of the Nerd Party were actually at Star Wars Celebration, as you'll have seen if you've been following the social media feeds. Very, very jealous, especially of all the freebies. That's why you want to go to these things. It's not to get the footage, it's to get the exclusive freebies. That's what I like. I love the, I think the panel I would have liked to actually go to see was the Galaxy's Edge one, the Disneyland Star Wars World panel. And I think they came out with, I think it was like a Coca-Cola t-shirt, but with Coca-Cola written in like a new Star Wars language, and that was like, that is just like so niche and so nerdy that I want one, even though it's sheer product placement and it's just complete nonsense. But I want to have one. I've got to have one, even though apparently all the t-shirts are extra large. I don't care. I still want one.
Yeah, you'll have to send a nice little message to Mike Schindler asking for a wee favour there.
Yeah, no, I think he's already given another one away to someone, so yeah, no, we'll have to. But I expect he will have a full rundown on celebrations on Aggressive Negotiates in the upcoming weeks. So that's the big sort of franchise ones talked about. So, it's been a while since we've, had an episode together. So what have you been watching since I've been away?
Well, I've kind of watched a lot, but the one thing I kind of want to chat about is something I got the chance to do at the weekend, and it was the Pity Party Film Club. So they've been kind of doing some interesting screenings in sort of Glasgow for a little while. So they had a sort of an event on Saturday where they showed 4 films, with focus being films of female friendship, and one of them was Frances Ha, which is like, I've said on the show before, I'm surprised we haven't ever actually done an episode on it, but So they were showing Frances Ha, Little Darlings, Girlfriends, and Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion. So I'd sort of seen Girlfriends a year or so ago, and it was a really bad copy when I was sort of doing my 52 films by women last year. Little Darlings I'd never seen before. It stars Cynthia Nixon, recently tried to run for mayor of New York, for sort of the Senate or whatever in New York, and famously in Sex and the City. And it's a story about two 15-year-olds that are looking to lose their virginity at camp. So it is a film that is truly of its time, and you're watching and going, my god, I could never imagine a film like this nowadays. And France Ha is always such a treat to see kind of in a screen and with an audience. The last time I saw it in the cinema was at the Bellman, actually, and I loved it. It's one of my all-time favourites, so it still holds up. I just think it's perfect. And Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion was a first-time watch, and I really, really liked it. It had plenty of laughs. I thought the main cast were all excellent. So it was a really kind of good day to see something like that, where it's celebrating sort of, females in cinema, and I thought it was a really nice event at the CCA in Glasgow. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do in the future. I thought it was a really great day out. What about for yourself? You've sort of been here, there, everywhere. What have you kind of taken on board?
Well, I was away for a couple of weeks because I was traveling around India with my wife, who's still over there. Hello, Lucy. I hope you're listening and enjoying it. She's taking more time out after a PhD, and she's doing yoga teacher training, but unfortunately I could only get a couple of weeks off of work on holidays. But I managed to cover about 1,000 miles traveling around India, and it was an incredible place. Enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, and of course managed to stop in and check out a Bollywood film. Sort of traveling around in the back of a car for like 1,000 miles, you get to see sort of different cities and stuff like that, little towns and whatever, and the amount of money they spend on cinema advertising is interesting because you don't get many sort of trailers on TV, and even in the actual cinema you don't get the trailers, but you get lots of bill posters, sort of with the wallpaper paste slapped up everywhere. So as you come into a town that's got a cinema, you start to see more and more of them. And there was a fantastic one for Captain Marvel over in the west side of India in sort of Tamil Nadu that had it in the Captain Marvel written in sort of, I think it was Telugu and stuff like that. So it had like the Indian sort of writing on it rather than Captain Marvel. And I was like, I really, really wanted one of those. I was almost tempted to get the guy in the car to stop somewhere and try and tear one off of a wall. Sadly, I couldn't do it to take it home, but I really wanted one of those as a souvenir. However, I did not catch Captain Marvel because outside of the major cities, that had the big sort of multiplexes, you couldn't actually really see Captain Marvel. It was much more of the sort of traditional sort of Bollywood Telugu sort of films, but I did manage to catch one which was called Argentine Fans, and it was in India with no subtitles. So again, a slight disadvantage, but Lucy and myself went to watch this, and we were able to follow the main story. Alfred Hitchcock once said that a good movie is one that you can watch with the volume turned down and you can still understand what's going on. And these films are over the top, larger than life. The acting is just like, lots of wide eyes, sort of like shocked reactions, lots of, little sound effects in the background for people showing disbelief and stuff like that. And the story was essentially, it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet sort of film where there's a boy and a girl, they sort of grow up, the young kids grow up, they go to school and whatever, and then suddenly one day he realizes he fancies her. But every 4 years, the World Cup comes around, and because I couldn't understand what was going on, I couldn't understand why exactly, but for some reason the Indian people, especially in Kerala, love Latin American football teams. So every year the town that they're in splits into two factions. Half of them support Brazil, half of them support Argentina. The guy supporting Argentina, and of course the girl that he likes, oh no, she supports Brazil. So you've got the Romeo and Juliet star-crossed lovers sort of thing. Is it going to work out? And it takes place across sort of several World Cups and stuff like that, up to the ultimate irony. I think it was when was it the year that Portugal won? There's like one Portuguese fan in the city, and therefore he ends up getting the last laugh over everyone because Brazil and Argentina don't actually win the World Cup in any of the years that they were. I was remembering the scene when it gets to the bit where Brazil got that absolute humping by Germany, and I was like, I know what's coming here. I was like, yeah, I remember that bit. So yeah, it was just like crazy to see. But the most startling fact about my Bollywood experience was the fact that I got 2 tickets, 2 popcorns, and 2 juices for around about 500 rupees, which is about £5. So that's a night out for less than a student ticket in the UK, which was just incredible. And yeah, so I think if you're ever over there, you should absolutely go full in for the full Bollywood experience. It's all very well watching it in an American or UK movie with subtitles and stuff like that, but I think if you want the full experience, you should go immerse yourself in a Bollywood, I think.
Yeah, like it's amazing that it's so cheap as well. Like, what's the reaction kind of like? What are the crowds like there? That we always think of the UK audience as quiet and stoic, and then Americans, they like to get involved in the film. What's kind of the vibe in sort of an Indian cinema with films like that?
Well, I'd like to say that firsthand, that it was raucous and crowded, but Lucy will call me out because she was there, and she'll say I was not telling the truth. But the screening we actually went to was a mid-afternoon screening during the week because it was the only time we could really go, and it was us and about 4 other people, so it was actually quite quiet. This film was coming towards the end of the run, but I used to do host Bollywood screenings. I used to run Bollywood screenings at the Belmont, and there was a local group that would basically get these 35mm prints shipped up, would make them up, would screen them. This would be like at 11 o'clock at night after the main films had done, and they were always packed, and you could hear them jumping, laughing, crying, dancing away. They'd just be having a great time. I think the films are meant to be more of a sort of... I think Bollywood audiences are probably more akin to certainly American audiences than UK audiences. UK audiences are very sort of reserved, and you might get the odd round of applause at the end of a film, but that's about it. People will laugh and stuff, but you won't get that sort of... But American audiences are very more sort of, oh hell no, I can't believe you just did that, and stuff like that. So yeah, they're very more sort of along that sort of lines. And but in terms of my prep for my Indian trip, there was one film I really wanted to watch, and that was Darjeeling Limited. Now, I know it's your least favourite Wes Anderson film, and it wasn't one that I was too keen on before, but rewatching it actually now, it's I really enjoyed it a lot more because, part of me really wanted to experience that train journey of... everyone says you've got to go on a train. So my last day, I was taking a train down to the time where I was getting to the airport, and and I got a nice air-conditioned carriage, I got a nice little bunk to myself, so that was fine. I didn't have anyone shouting at me, telling me they were going to mace me in the face or anything like that. But, I had to go all in and try and experience it for myself. And, yeah, I thought it was great. And I would love to go back another day, explore a bit more of the city. But, yeah, I'm definitely keen to experience a bit more Bollywood films. And I found some on Netflix. So I'll probably do that. And there's a few directed by women as well that I'm going to try and check out and probably have as a future recommendation going down the line, I think. But on my flight out there, on the flight back, I was completely knackered and just went straight to sleep. But on my flight back, I basically made a thing to try and find as many films directed by women on the flight over, and I managed to watch 4 directed by women over there. So I've got some stored up for future weeks. But that brings us on to our... So as we do every week, we do 52 films by women, and we each do a recommendation each. So Lee, what is your recommendation?
Kind of following on from 8th Grade earlier, I'm going with Lady Bird by Greta Gerwig, and I think it's definitely one of my favourite movies of the past few years. And again, it's something very similar to 8th Grade, where there's so much kind of to relate to there, and it's such a heartwarming story, and again by A24 as well. And I think it's one of the sort of the best films of the past few years. It may not be the best film that gets released that year, but it strikes me as something that could be the same as 8th Grade, where it's a film that goes beyond the audience that should be seeing it, and it becomes a film that people keep finding and falling in love with, and it becomes memes and out of context Twitter feeds, etc. And I think it's definitely a great film, and I cannot wait to see what Greta Gerwig does with Little Women later in the year.
I think that's going to be a fantastic... I mean, she's got the most incredible cast, probably outside of June, I think, to have in that. Emma Stone, Emma Watson, I think it's just going to be a fantastic film, and really excited to see what she does. She really, really impressed me with Lady Bird, and because I'm not always overly keen on the films that she stars in, but I thought Lady Bird was great, and I thought Saoirse Ronan was fantastic. And for my pick, I've gone with another actress who has turned director, and I've gone with Unicorn Store by Brie Larson, which is available now on Netflix. Now, I think we both saw this way back at the Edinburgh International Film Festival last June, and I really loved it. I thought it was an incredibly sort of sweet, heartfelt film, and I was like, why isn't this getting released? Why isn't this getting released? And then, Netflix optioned the rights, and to be fair on them, they've waited until just the right time to screen it. They basically launched it at the beginning of this month, just after the team of Brie Larson and Samuel Jackson, who stars in Unicorn Store, made $1 billion in Captain Marvel. So, the waiting game has paid off, and I think because of that, it's going to get a much bigger audience than it potentially would have normally. I mean, Brie Larson is an Oscar-winning actress, and you think that would have been enough for people to take a chance on the film to release it in cinemas and stuff like that. But, I thought it was a great film that deserves a wider audience. I think it's not going to be for everyone. Some people will probably accuse it of being a bit twee and whimsical, but I thought it really had a really nice sort of heartfelt message to it about, as long as you believe in something, whether it's a unicorn or yourself or a relationship or family, whatever, then that is sometimes enough to make sure that you're a decent, good person, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a film I enjoyed some of it, and some of it I just didn't quite take to. I'm glad it finally got a release and people are able to find it, and I think it's proven to be incredibly popular with the people out there.
Absolutely. So that brings us to the end of our episode. So, Lee, if people want to finally be able to chat with you spoiler-free about 8th grade, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, people can find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo. Gucci!
You see, you've gone and stolen my joke. I was going to do that right at the end of the podcast. I can't believe you did that, but I should have expected it. And yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at ThatChampCelluloid. And of course, you can find us every fortnight on the A24 project. And make sure to check out all the other great podcasts available on the Nerd Party. But until next time, Gucci!
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.